Hey everybody, this is Mike Cricket 113. Hope everybody's doing well, playing with your radios, whatever they may be. Um, Radio is really important. Communication, I should say, is really important. This goes beyond cell phones. I mean, that's a form of communication, but during this past year and up until now, and going on in the future, radio communication has got an uptick. There's a lot of new ham radio operators out there, and there's a lot of 11 meter operators out there, especially during COVID, during the shutdowns, and we're trying to stay home and not be as social, especially in the beginning. A lot of us found that getting on the CB radio and or maybe getting your ham license and talking to other people out there was a good way to feel like you're still being involved, to make new friends, and to learn about your community, learn about these hobbies, and learn something. That's the whole point of having a hobby, is learning, and enjoying what you do. So getting back to it, what you have in front of you there is the MFJ-828. This is a SWR and Wattmeter. And it's kind of an interesting one. And it's got some brains inside of it, which is really cool. This is a digital display and also an analog display. It handles up to 1500 watts. It's for the HF and lower portion of the VHF frequency bands. So from HF, it will cover up to 160 meters, which is your 1.8 megahertz, all the way through 6 meters, which is about 54 megahertz, give or take, of course. It's like I said, it handles up to 1500 watts, and when I said it had brains in it, this thing will adjust itself depending on what power you're putting into it via the radio there. So if you're only doing 5-10 watts, it will use a low power setting of 25 watts. If you're doing anything higher, up to 250 watts, that would be your mid power section. And from 250 watts that you would be pumping into it, all the way up to 1500 watts, that would be the high power function. And it does it by itself. You don't have to switch anything. Like other SWR meters, they may have 3 different settings on there. Well, with this one, the MFJ-828, you don't have to adjust it. I mean, you can, but you don't have to. And that's what's really cool about it. So let me just read off from the manual here real quick. Some of the functions on this thing. So I already said the power range of 25, 250, and 1500 watts. It's for HF from 1.8 megahertz to 54 megahertz. There's a SWR alarm, and I'll get into that in a little bit here, that will go off automatically if your SWR hits a 3.0, which is good, because if you're not paying attention, and all of a sudden, say your antenna falls down, your connection's bad, you don't want to burn the finals in your radio. So that's a good thing, having an alarm on there. Let's see, what else we got here? So we have that. The amplifier bias control. So anyway, in the back of the radio, in the back of the unit, I'll show you that later. You can plug in your linear amplifier into the meter. And if it detects a high SWR, it will shut off your amplifier, so you don't burn up your amplifier, and you won't burn up your radio. And that's pretty ingenious. It has backlighting on the analog meter, which is on this one over here, and then it's a nice green backlit for the digital meter, and you have numeric readings and bar readings for SWR, forward power, and reflected power. Now on the analog here, here's the forward and the reflected. why do I have this off? Let's turn it on. So the little power button here, the red one, that's how you turn it on. So there she is. Okay, as you can see, you have the analog meter over here. You have your forward needle and your reflected needle. And these cross, and when they cross, when you hit the PTT button, in the red section here, from infinity down to 1, will read your SWR. So the forward power and the reflective power, and then where the two needles intersect, will read your SWR. Over here on the digital side, up top here where the zeros are, that will read what megahertz you are, your frequency counter. Over here on the right is the spot where your SWR will be displayed. REF is your reflective power. That's the power coming back through down the antenna, back into your coax, back into your radio, I should say, which is a bad thing if it's really high. And over here is your forward power. Let me just check the list one more time. So you got your built-in frequency counters. There also is a boot in the back where you can update the firmware on this thing, which is pretty cool. And it has your peak and your average power mode. All right, so on the MFJ website, for the MFJ-828, and actually all their products, you can find the manuals. The manual's 20 pages, very, very in-depth. But most of the people that are following my channel want to know the easy way of how to work this thing. And honestly, I've worked one of their MFJ products before that was a digital meter, so I'm used to this side over here. This one is new for me. I've never seen an X meter, but I really like it. I like how it's lit up and it's easy to read. But anyway, so the easy way of how to use this thing is as follows. So I have it plugged in. Let me just tell you that. Let me tell you that. I forgot to tell you that. So this thing doesn't, you can't just plug it into the wall. There's a little 12 volt jack in the back, and it has to be hooked up to a power supply. So you could either use your power supply that you use for DC current for your radio, which most of our radios run off of DC current unless you have really one of those really expensive plug-in-the-wall 11-meter base stations or ham radios. So I'm using a 3 amp power supply to power this right now. And it comes with the cord. It comes with the cord, so you know. So where the heck was I? Anyway, right. So you have your mode function here, and this goes through, right now we're in our digital readout. And honestly, this is the easiest way to read everything. Now I'm going to key my microphone real quick, and we're going to see what happens here on the digital meter. Okay, so as you can tell, I'm on channel, 24, but this is, for this test, I'm using the 11 meter band because, so I don't have to ID here every 10 minutes or whatever. So anyway, this is, it's reading out the frequency 27.235 megahertz. It's an average power. My SWR is 1.31. That's not too bad. For the IMAX 2000, so you guys know what antenna I'm using, that's not too bad for channel 24 in the middle of the 11 meter band. My forward power on that click was 5.4, and the reflective power was 0.1, so not too shabby. Now my radio is set for 5 watts. That was a quick key, and it's reading my average power. I just want to tell you something real quick though. Now, I just keyed the mic and it gave me my frequency. Now, if you modulate, okay, if you modulate, say you did audio or testing 1, 2, 3, 4, the frequency is going to jump. I'm in AM though too, so you know. Usually these meters, these styles of meters, measure the carrier wave. So your carrier is going to be your amplitude modulation, which has your upper sideband, your carrier, and your lower sideband. So when you usually do tests, you want to do either AM or FM, I would imagine. Sideband is going to fluctuate too much, and you won't get, if you key up with sideband, you won't get a proper reading right here. So always try to use your AM. So this is a good setup. The MFJ-828 is good for 11 meter operation and ham radio, okay? So anyway, back to what I was saying here. What was I saying? So it's reading out my frequency here, my SWR, my forward power, and reflective power. Now, a lot of you guys, all right, you like that you could figure out what your average power is. But we all like to know what our peak power is. So this button here is your peak power button. And if you hit it, whoops, sorry about that. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little 1 here. And it will hold that peak number over here and there for 1 second. If you hit the peak button again, it'll hold that for 2 seconds. And the last is 3 seconds. One more time and it goes back to average power. I want to do the 3-second one for giggles here and see what happens. Now mind you, this is peak power, PEP power, that it's going to measure, and your reflective power as well. So obviously I have to put a little modulation in there. So let's try it here. Audio. Okay, now remember what I told you here. When you put modulation in, this is going to fluctuate. Now you guys know from what I told you and what you saw, this I am on 27.235. See how that moved? So that part I don't really like. But, you know, what can you do? I mean, it's doing so much. And notice when I modulated, my SWR went up a little bit, not a lot. It's still 1.3, but now it's 1.33. And my forward power, my swing, as we like to call it, went up to 12.9 watts. So with a 5.2, 5.4 carrier, when you modulate it, your voice is is flexing that carrier, and it swung it up to 12.9 watts. So just think about if you have a 4-watt 11 meter radio, you know, you're not just doing 4 watts, that's just the carrier. And when you modulate or talk, it goes up to almost 13 watts. So that's there. Let's look over here. I'm going to set this so we can kind of see a little better. So let's do that peak reading again and see what the needle does over there. I'm just going to key up and talk. This is Cricket 113, Cricket 113, testing 1, 2, 3, testing the MFJ-828. See, it held it for those 3 seconds and then dropped the needles. So, technically, and that forward is at 8.4. Now that just varies also with your modulation. But getting back to the analog meter here. So you have your forward bar here, or your arc. It says 0, and it goes up to 300. I know that's a little hard to see, but it does, trust me. And your reflective goes from 0 to 60, okay? That needle going that way. If you're in low power, whatever you get here on the meter, whether it be 10, 20, 30, 40, you see the little dashes there, and there's 50. You want to divide by 10 if you're in low power. If you're in mid power, it doesn't really matter because I told you mid power goes from 0 to 250 watts. And then in high power, you want to multiply by 10. So if you're in high power, say you're pumping out, I don't know, 1,000 watts, this is going to go up to the 100 mark, the needle would. I don't have an amplifier, so I can't show you that. And then you just times by 10, so 10 times 100 is 1,000. So that's how you would read that. Same thing goes over here. You would divide for low power and multiply for high power. So it's quite interesting. And it's really cool remember the 3-second delay that we're in peak, that also holds those needles. So I'll show you that again. Audio check, 1, 2, 3, 4. See how it held that? So that's pretty cool. And see on that one, now mind you with the modulation, it moved the frequency counter, but my SWR is still 1.34, and my forward power, this is back to 12.7, and the reflective power is 0.3, so hardly anything. So that's really good. That just means that all the power that was put on that transmission is going out that antenna. So I'm really liking this MFJ-828. Pretty easy so far. Now I breezed through the manual, and there's a lot with this thing, but the simple basic functions here are pretty easy. So over here you have your alarm. If your SWR is high, I told you it was going to go off and give you a beep. If you push that button, 2 beeps, did you just hear that? 2 beeps means your alarm's on. 1 beep means it's off. And that's the power button. So I'm going to play with this mode button here a little bit, and I'm going to try to adjust over here for the light. Let's see here. Okay, so let's zoom in a little bit. Maybe that will help. All right. So with this meter, like I told you before, I really like how everything's written out. It's all right there, easy to read, nice good size, it's lit up, it's not too bright, which is a good thing sometimes if you you got your computer on, your radio on, all these other lights, so it's nice and nice. You got your SWR bar meter here, and you have a power meter here. So what's that? So we hit this mode button here. Some of this is going to go away. What do we got there? So we still have the frequency counter. We still have the SWR. We still have a digital readout for the reflective power. But now we have a choice that there's going to be 2 bars here. They're going to appear in a second. Let me go to average power. So now we're back to that. It's 2 bars in a second now. All right, let's key up and see what happens. All right, so we got our SWR, which is really weird because it's saying, all right, okay. I see what's going on there. Okay, so it says 1.3 over there like it was, and my power was 5.2, so that moved over here. And the first bar was right below the 1.5. All right, you can see it's like maybe that little quarter of a line there is over the 1. And then obviously, I don't know if you can see that, but that little speck over there was the power. So if you want to read it, if you want to read your SWR and your power with the bars, there's that. I don't really like that. I don't see, if you have the option to have full digital readout, why would you go with the bar? Because I was even second guessing it there. I mean, I know this video is getting long here, but I was second guessing it there. If you hit the button again, this is going to be a big bar, and that's going to be your SWR only. That big bar is going to give you your SWR only. I guess if you're looking in the corner of your eye and you just see that bar while you're talking to your buddy on the radio, you can monitor it. So maybe it's not so much a bad thing because you're still getting your frequency readout, your power readout, and your SWR digitally displayed. So maybe that bar is a good thing. I could see that in my peripheral. And then if you hit it again, whoops, you hit it again, now you got 3 bars. Looks like you're still going to get your SWR reading on the right, top right, and your power reading on the bottom. Let's key up and see what happens. Alright, so we have power. Whoops. We have our power at 5.8 or 5.1 we saw in the beginning, and your SWR is still 1.3. but then you have 3 bars to read. So you have your SWR at top, your power in the middle, and your reflective power on the bottom. So it's totally up to you which mode you would like to read the display in. But honestly, I just like that one. This is Mike Cricket 113 testing the MFJ-828. And there you go. So on 27235, channel 24, got it. Still the SWR is nice, forward power is nice, and your reflective power is awesome. So it's pretty easy to use. All right, so that was fun. So I really think this is a good meter. I really like it. In the back of the radio, you have your, your hookups and whatnot. I'm going to move this camera here, and it's going to get a little noisy, so I'll show you this. I'm going to show you a top-down view, but then I'm going to go to the computer here and show you what the manual is so I can explain it all to you, or at least try to. So anyway, don't mind the mess. I got my LMR 400 coming in. This is a jumper cable. It's a 2-foot cable going to the radio. And I have my LMR 400 going out for the antenna. That little screw there, that's for grounding your equipment. You always want to do that. We're not doing it right now, unfortunately, because I don't have that set up for the, because I don't have that set up right now. So let's try to zoom this in here for you. All right. Being on the top floor makes it a little difficult. So don't mind the amateur camera work here, guys. You know, we got to start somewhere. So anyway, let's see if we could zoom in a little bit more maybe. I guess not. All right, that's fine. I could always pull this closer. Helps a little bit. So this is a little drawing of the back of the MFJ-828. Like I said before, you're going to have this guy here. This wants 12 watts DC, 250 milliamps. Like I said, it comes with a cord that you would plug in here and hook up to a power supply. Like I said, I have mine hooked up to a 3-amp power supply for 12 volts. So that's one thing that's interesting. I guess I'm not used to that. I have a couple other MFJ meters, and I'm able to use an AC plug. But I don't suggest it with this one. You might want to call the manufacturer and MFJ and see if you're able to do that or not. But I'm going to tell you that the manual tells me that you need to use 12 volts DC, and that's what it is. This port here, the RS232, that's that data port I was mentioning before, where you can upload new firmware for the meter, which is really interesting. It's a relay port. There's that ground port, the wing that I was showing you where you would ground it. You always want to ground your radios, any equipment, your radios, your meters, your power supplies, everything you want to ground to a separate ground. And we're not talking about the third plug on your AC plug, on a separate ground to keep, just in case any electrical power, so you don't get shocked from your radios or lightning storms, and protect you from everything. Also, it's better for the radio. You got your SO239 antenna in, and your SO239 coaxial cable, female for your transmitter here. MFJ products are made in the USA. I reached out to MFJ and I talked to Richard Stubbs, and really nice fella. We've had some communications here and there, and as you know, he sent me some gear. So I told him I would use the equipment and do some honest reviews, and I'm really happy about our communication. He's very informative and a nice fella. But you know what I'm really happy about? These products are made here in this country. What's better than that? You know, it's hard to find stuff that's made in the USA. You got Red Wing boots. See, I'm having trouble listing a few things. Of course, all our chemicals, hair products, all that kind of stuff. Some of our pills are made here. But finding equipment, radio equipment that's made in the USA, that's a hard thing to find. So here we are. We have a company here, MFJ Enterprises Incorporated, made in the USA. That's awesome. In Starkville. That's pretty cool. So anyway, that's the back of the radio. I keep saying that. That's the back of the meter, the MFJ-828. So we're going to go back to that real quick. Let's see here. Might have to do some adjusting. Are you guys laughing at me yet? I bet nobody's watching right now after 25 minutes in. But I really just wanted to give you the basic lowdown. You know, there's other reviewers out there. I'm sure you could find other reviews for this thing. But on my channel, you know, I give you my honest opinion. And that's what you're going to get. So after all this, I think I'm going to recommend it. You know, everybody needs something in their arsenal to test their radios, to see what's going on. And why not get the best of both worlds with a digital and an analog meter? And like I said, it's auto functioning, so what power you throw into it, it's going to change. You got your peak readings there, which I'll show you again. I think we're an average. Yes, we are because of the A. There's 1 second. There's 2 seconds. Let's try that. Audio check 1 2 3 4. Mike Cricket 113 testing the MFJ-828. Mind you, like I said, the frequency counter is going to change, but there you go. So, you know, it's just, it's pretty cool. I really like it. And this is the review of the MFJ-828. So go check it out on the MFJ website. If you have any questions, you can email them on the products they have. And you can also call. So this is Mike Cricket 113, and this was a long one. I'm sorry about that, but you know what? I hope I went through most of it. And keep playing with those radios. Have a good one, and we'll talk soon. Take care.